A lot of you were angry with me when I said that Bitcoin would be moving lower. However, today we dropped below $106,000. In today's video, we'll be talking about what are the next key levels that I'm looking at for Bitcoin, and hint, hint, we are at a very important level. And if we break below here, it's highly likely that we will move even lower. We'll also be taking a look at some of the next areas that I would be potentially longing Bitcoin, as well as the overall news in the industry. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Let's jump right into the video. First things first, as per usual, we finally got some kind of volatility for Bitcoin, and we did break down as predicted. So let's just go over the logic as to why I thought we would be breaking down. Number one, there were more longs in the market than shorts. And usually when there are way more longs, we tend to go back down and target that liquidity. But that's not the only reason, because sometimes there can be more longs and we still continue to go up. The other reason was because we were at the top of this channel, and you can see that we got rejected immediately right at this white line. And so that was reason number two. The next reason we saw a little bit of a rejection here is because we got rejected at the value area high. And you can see here that it is this yellow line on the chart. Now, as soon as we broke above this, if we were to hold it as support, at that point, Bitcoin looked primed for continuation. However, you can see that we got a pretty aggressive move downwards the following day once we closed above this level. Now, the next wick that I was targeting potentially for a reversal, if we weren't to reverse back down here, would have been this previous wick, which was set on June 16th. But you can see if I zoom in here, we didn't quite make it there. However, the rejection still occurred. So right now, we are making our way to this point of control, which is a very important level for Bitcoin. This sits right around 105.5K. But before we can even begin talking about this level, we have to explore the current level that we're at, which is 106.2K. The reason I'm bringing this up, if you've been following the channel, you know that this is a very, very crucial level for Bitcoin. Every single time that we get closes below this level on the daily time frame, it means that Bitcoin is ready to continue to move lower. And don't believe me? Let's take a look at the charts. We can see that when we set that all-time high around inauguration, we had multiple wicks above this level, but we always ended up closing below. And once we got those closes below after getting rejected, you can see that Bitcoin dropped quite dramatically. One time over here, the next time over here. And then when we made this most recent all-time high right below $112,000, that is when Bitcoin beforehand got that daily close above 106.2K. As soon as we got the close above this level on the daily time frame, I told you that we would be making a new all-time high, and that is exactly what happened. So now that we are back at this level, ideally, if you are a bull here, you want to see it hold as support. So let's zoom in here on the 4-hour time frame. We can see that we are slightly below this level. The exact line that I have on this chart is $106,160, but it may depend based on which exchange you're using or which chart you're looking at. Overall though, we can see that on the 4-hour time frame, we did indeed get a close below that level, which is not positive if you're a bull. Now, of course, as I'm recording this video, there is still just under 2 hours left for the next 4-hour close, and we're fighting here. If Bitcoin can close above this level, then there's all the chance that we can go ahead, hold it as support, and bounce up. Now, this is on the 4-hour time frame, but ultimately, if you're more of a long-term trader, what you want to be looking at is really the daily time frame. And so, if we can hold it as support on the daily time frame, you can see that we tested it exactly, and right now we are right above. Then that means that Bitcoin looks good for continuation to the upside, and I would potentially be considering a long here. However, break below and get the confirmed daily close below, it honestly wouldn't matter what happens afterwards. If the candle goes ahead and closes right here, for example, right below $106,000, then even tomorrow we could maybe get a little bit of a pump, but with that confirmed daily close, I would be confident to say that Bitcoin would likely go ahead and at least target this fair value gap, which we identified a couple videos ago. That would bring Bitcoin below $105,000, and it's at that point, depending on how the price action reacts, that I would be considering a new Bitcoin long. The reason why I'm already considering a new Bitcoin long is because if we take a look at the liquidation chart here, we know that now at this point, since Bitcoin did have the breakdown that I've been talking about, we are starting to see more and more shorts enter the market. And it's still relatively even, all things considered. It's not like there's way more shorts than longs like we saw previously when there was 8 times more shorts than longs, right around the 98K bottom, which of course we longed within the community. But what I'm getting at here is there's all the chance here that as Bitcoin continues to trickle on lower, if it gets that close below 106.2K, more and more people would pile into shorts. And when more and more people pile into shorts, you know on this channel, we like to go against the herd and trade against that. So if all of a sudden I start to see that way more shorts are entering the market and Bitcoin finds its way into this fair value gap that we've identified right below $105,000, somewhere between 102.5 to 104K. If we find our way around this level, that would be a pretty solid opportunity for a swing long, especially if more shorts continue to enter the market. So let's see what happens. Right now, as I'm recording this video, we are actually below this key daily support level. And so if we end up closing the day below this level, at that point, I am targeting this region for a potential Bitcoin long. That's of course pending the reaction that we get and how many more shorts potentially start piling into the market. Now, taking a look at this liquidation map, I wanted to show you that on the 12-hour time frame, a lot of people already tried to re-enter a long. And so this tells me that if there's still a lot of longs trying to re-enter at these levels as Bitcoin tries to hold support, then potentially we could be going back down and liquidating these longs before we get a significant bounce. You'll notice that the nature of what I'm talking about here is a little bit annoying because we just continue to chop around. There's no clear direction for Bitcoin. And the reason being, this is the summer chop thesis. As I said, all we can really do if we want to trade is trade this range. We don't control price action. And so if we get the closes we need, for example, right now, a daily close below 106K, that would tell me that Bitcoin is likely to move lower. However, we start holding these levels as support. At that point, I would be considering a long. Now, where would I get a little bit fearful? Because I know that some of you will probably be asking about this. That would be if Bitcoin were to go and revisit somewhere around the 100K level. Ultimately, if Bitcoin is to go at some point this summer and tag the all-time high, as I said, I don't think we'll be making an aggressive all-time high, but if we have the chance to tag this high, I would say that we don't want to see Bitcoin back below in this area because we tagged it once, we tagged it twice, we tagged it 3 times, and ultimately it did hold as support. But as we know, the more and more times that we tap into either a support or resistance level, the higher the likelihood that we break through. And so, if Bitcoin were to eventually find its way back below this level, which is 100K, that's the point in time where we could be seeing Bitcoin into the mid 90K range. Perhaps that would align with my thesis where we will be getting an aggressive move down sometime around August, September, and that would be the opportunity to not just accumulate Bitcoin, but also accumulate altcoins. And as always, if you want to know the exact trades that I'm executing on, or, for example, which altcoins I will be dollar cost averaging into, make sure to join my free Telegram community, which is the first link in my description down below. As you can see, I also share some trade setups. That's of course from my Signals group, and you can feel free to join that if you'd like. Also, if you want to trade as I do, you do have the second link in my description down below, which brings you directly to Bluffin. And this is an excellent exchange that I've been using for a very long time, non-KYC, and I have a ton of capital on here, so I really do trust this exchange. Now, back to the charts. I gave you the scenarios. Right now, as I'm recording this video, Bitcoin is below $106,000. Again, the daily close below this important level, around 106.2K, tells us that Bitcoin is likely to be moving lower. So let's see what happens. We're still in the range, we're still chopping around, but that doesn't mean that we can't make money in this range. And those of you that are in my community know this already. So let's go over some news. First of all, the US Senate has passed President Trump's big, beautiful bill, which sets up for final passage in the US House. The reason why this is significant is because a lot of people are speculating that this big, beautiful bill could potentially be very bullish for crypto, Bitcoin, stocks, you get the gist of it. And this bill would actually increase the debt limit by $5 trillion. Now, if we take a look at the US debt right now, we're sitting right around $37 trillion. So imagine this increasing by another $5 trillion under President Trump. Next thing I wanted to show you here, Connecticut officially banned the state from creating a Bitcoin reserve or investing in digital assets. Now, this is the more negative news that we got out of the states. We know that a lot of these states are actually accepting Bitcoin and really embracing it. So it's not that surprising to see that there's at least a couple of them that are putting their foot on the brake here. And next up, Jerome Powell did have some comments about stablecoins.
Let me say on stablecoins if I can.
Yeah.
I do share the concerns that you hear here. But I also think it's a positive step that we don't have a regulatory framework for these now in the United States. We tried very hard in the last Congress to work with people on both sides of the aisle to create such a thing. Now it looks like we're well on the way to creating a framework, which I think is something we need. If we're going to have stable coins, and apparently we are, we need to have a federal and state level regulatory framework, which I think we're making progress towards having.
So ultimately, the stablecoin framework is indeed positive. Now, who would have thought at the beginning of this cycle that stablecoins would have been the main theme? Everyone is launching their stablecoins left, right, and center, and now it's important that we have that legal framework. A lot of people are also saying that stablecoins are a great way to ensure that the US dollar remains number one. And the next piece of news, the SEC approves conversion of Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund into an ETF holding the following cryptocurrencies: Bitcoin, of course, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. And what was the price action? Well, if we take a look at Solana here, we can see that we're down 6% on the day. If we take a look at XRP here, we can see that we are indeed down a few percent as well, 2% as a matter of fact. And taking a look at Ethereum, down 1%, and taking a look at Cardano, sorry for it taking so long to load, 5%. So you can tell that the market is a little bit exhausted because typically this kind of news does see some significant pumps, at least if you were part of the previous cycles. Right now, it does seem that we're just exhausted. Bitcoin is still within this range, and I hate to say it, and I hate to be the Debbie Downer, as one of you called me, but I still think that Bitcoin will stay in this range. Of course, we will have some deviations, and maybe at some point we can target this high over the course of the summer, grab a lot of liquidity there, but ultimately I do think that we would be coming back down and having a relatively choppy summer, as we've been discussing on the channel. You're probably tired of me talking about this, but ultimately this is exactly what's playing out right now. Now, I also wanted to quickly discuss Bitcoin dominance because we touched on this a few days ago. When Bitcoin remained relatively stable, Bitcoin dominance was going down. People were getting excited. This is going to be the summer of altcoin seasons. However, if I zoom in here, we can see that on the week now, Bitcoin dominance is green. And why is that? As I told you, as soon as Bitcoin makes any kind of move, whether that's down or up, the rest of the altcoin market will bleed against Bitcoin. When Bitcoin consolidates within a choppy $2,000 range, at that point in time, of course, altcoins can get a little bit of relief. But as Bitcoin continues its move, whether that means we continue to move lower here or we hold this as support and break up, Bitcoin dominance will likely continue to increase. It's only really if we chop around within a very, very tight range where Bitcoin dominance will continue to go down. But ultimately, as I said, I still think that we will find our way above 66%, which we already tapped into, and well into this range, perhaps as high as 70% Bitcoin dominance. And that sums up today's video. I got a lot of backlash for suggesting that Bitcoin could be moving lower. Remember, when you're watching these videos, I'm just sharing my own thesis and how I'm trading and navigating this market. I try to remain as objective as possible. And I want to remind you, if Bitcoin were to rip much, much higher from here, hypothetically speaking, of course, that would benefit me much more than if we were to just chop around in this range. As I said several times, I have my spot portfolio and I have my trading portfolio. On the channel, I try to address more of the trading side of things. Of course, I will touch on the spot portfolio when we get better price action. But right now, as we're in this choppy range, the highest likely case scenario, in my opinion, was for Bitcoin to move lower. Now, we got this move. Are we going to move lower, or will we hold the key level of 106.2K as support, or the 105.5K level as support, which you'll remember is the point of control? Move below those levels and we'll find our way into the fair value gap where I would be considering a Bitcoin long. And of course, if you want to know exactly which positions I take, you have the first link in my description down below. It is my free Telegram community. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.